Welcome. It's time. It's time to drop in, open up, and receive. It's time to remember. It's time to believe. Let's elicit the beautiful, the good, and the true. It's time for me. It's time for you. Hello. Welcome to the channel. I'm your girl, Jillian Melissa, coming to you live under a full moon. It is Saturday, April 12th. It's about 90 degrees here in Austin, Texas. Just starting to turn up the heat. We're just starting to cook, preheating that oven. I was actually reflecting on the oven as a metaphor for manifestations. The other day, I was thinking about how I used to bake for my ex, and the second I would take those buzzword cinnamon rolls, gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, every healthy ingredient you can imagine, and nothing that would make your ass jiggle. And the second I take those cinnamon rolls out of the oven, he was, let's use the proper tense, he was wanting. He would endeavor to grab a cinnamon roll right away. And I'm like, homie, you gotta let them rest. You gotta let them cool. You will burn your tongue, you will burn your finger, and they're not meant to be consumed this hot. Most recipes will often indicate how long you should let something just rest, just cool before you serve it. And for those of us, like my ex, like me, we were aligned for a reason, who struggle with impatience, that can be really hard. He doesn't like being called my ex. Sorry about that, folks. My perceived twin flame. Is that better? Yeah, ex is such such violent language. It feels icky, but hey, the shoe fits. When something comes out of the oven and we know it's done, we want it right away. That cinnamon roll looks so good, I want it right now. It's done, it's finished, it's out of the oven. But there's actually a period of time where it needs to cool before you can still have it piping hot in 3 minutes, 4 minutes, whatever that time window is for the given recipe. So for manifestations, there is a temperature that the oven needs to be set to, and the oven has to preheat. You have to prepare the recipe. You have to put all the ingredients together in the right formula, in the right order, using the right methods. And baking is very precise, very scientific, unlike cooking, which is much more free-flowing and artistic. You can put a little bit more salt and a little bit more oregano on your chicken and just have fun. If you just throw a little bit more baking soda into your cake, you're going to get a very different cake, and it's going to be a very different consistency. So the oven's at the right temperature, your recipe's ready to rock, you put it in the right structure, the right pan, you put it in the oven. It has to cook the appropriate length of time, and then it has to cool. It has to set. It has to wait. We have to wait. And that moment, I think, is where a lot of us are in our manifestation journeys. I feel that way in terms of leaving Austin. Like, I'm very much done here. I'm done with this house. I'm done with this city. Sending love. Get me out of here. I can feel my future home is cooked. It's ready, but it's piping hot, and I can't get to it yet, And you just gotta wait. And that can be really challenging for a lot of us. So anyway, just whimsical analogies I think of as I'm floating around my house living my life. Today, we're not going to be talking about ovens or cooking or baking all that much. Today, we are going to be diving into the topic of attachment. Oof. Are you triggered already? Did I trigger you? Before we really get into it, I'd like to set a particular framing. I'd really like this episode to serve as a tunnel. In addition to contemplating ovens, I've recently been contemplating tunnels. One of my favorite parts of my undergrad life, one of the most beautiful aspects of Harvard, in my opinion, were the tunnels underground. There's a tunnel system underneath Harvard, and it's painted, and it's so cool. And you can literally go underground and travel from different houses, different locations around campus, and pop up somewhere else, right? Like I was in Adam's house, you could go to the tunnels underneath Adam's, and rather than walking around Harvard Square outside, you can go through these tunnels and pop up around campus. Wild. I thought it was wild. Maybe it's not that wild, but for me it was wild. And it reminds me of the warp pipes that's Bubbles coughing and hacking in the background. If that picks up, I apologize. He's rigorously chewing a bone that I want to let him live his life. Hopefully the chewing is not so disruptive to the audio. Anyway, warp pipes, like, Super Mario, or those green tubes, pipes, tunnels. Mario enters, goes goes down, and then pops up in a different level. I don't know all the video game terminology, but and then he's up somewhere else. Tunnels, that's what they do, right? And I'm hoping this episode is a tunnel for you, in that I'm going to be talking about attachment. As I talk about attachment, you're probably going to be thinking about some relationships in your life, perhaps your childhood and your attachment to your parents, what you know about your attachment style. All sorts of things are going to come up for you as you're listening to me. And we're kind of going to be in this underbelly talking about attachment. And then my hope is that you pop up somewhere new vis-a-vis attachment, that you either have some new clarity, you feel free to release, a greater degree of confidence around your ability to build a secure attachment style. You can win a secure attachment style. You can heal your attachment style. We're going to talk about all this. But yes, I really want this episode to be a tunnel. Part of why the tunnel theme is so alive for me, I participated in a workshop the other day through Harvardwood, which is an organization I joined as an undergrad that linked up undergrads with people who worked in Hollywood, Harvard alumni who worked in Hollywood. And that was like a tunnel, right? College students got funneled and tunneled into Hollywood. That's how I got some amazing internship opportunities. I got to work on Game of Thrones and Keeping Up with the Kardashians and Dance Moms and tons of other really cool, exciting projects. And I got to work for literary managers and Lifetime Network, and pretty much all the things I did in Hollywood, I got through this tunnel, Harvardwood. That's an energetic tunnel, right? Like here, you're in one ecosystem and you're blessed by these connections and this alumni network. And now we're just gonna pop you up in LA. And that's what I did every summer. I went through that Harvardwood tunnel, and then I did these internships in Los Angeles. I'm hoping this is sort of your attachment wood. That's not a clever name, but this is your tunnel for attachment. My hope is that by the end of this episode, you pop up somewhere new, in new and right relationship to attachment, how attachment plays out in your life. Of course, I'm certainly not the world's expert on attachment. So this is coming from my framing, my channel, what's alive for me now, what I've been moving through, and what I hope will be most productive to share. As always, per usual, please ask your body what you need before we dive into this topic of attachment. I needed a little more marine collagen in my coffee. I've been adding Nordic Naturals marine collagen to my coffee every day. Shout out to Nordic Naturals. Shout out to collagen. And I've really been setting the intention to slow down and feel that nervous system safety that true safety as I'm consuming the coffee with collagen. For me, when I drink coffee, I often feel the energy of being sped up. And I remember the first time I went to my neighbor Sean's house and he offered me, would you like coffee, matcha, tea? And I was like, whatever's easiest, I don't want to be in trouble. And he was like, no, what do you want? I'll make you whatever you want. I was like, actually, I'd really love a coffee. Then he whips out the coffee machine. I'm like, well, it was an equal effort because you clearly don't drink coffee that often because the machine's all the way hidden in the back of the cupboard. But yeah, I'll rock with this. And he makes me the cup of coffee, puts it in a beautiful mug, hands it to me. And I'm looking around his place. I'm feeling calm. I'm feeling supported. I'm feeling resourced. I'm feeling nourished. I'm feeling taken care of. And he's like, would you like some collagen? I love how I'm stammering. Would you like some collagen in your coffee? And I was like, you know what? Come to think of it, sir, I would. And that moment where he, then got out the collagen and put it in the coffee and stirred it and then handed it to me, I just felt so supported, so taken care of. And so as I do that for myself, I attempt to cultivate that same felt sense. As a single woman who runs her own business and does most things on her own, there can often be this feeling of rushing that comes over me, and also this feeling of like, it's all on me. There's no backstop. There's no energetic support. And so, I've just wanted to be really intentional about creating that support for myself and was guided to share that. So that's what my body wanted to do. I took a quick break. Ask your body what it needs. It might be something that it needs to ingest, like what I just did. I really needed to take that moment. I'm also trying to, have mermaid hair by May, and I just got my hair cut and she butchered it and cut off I don't even want to talk about it. I don't want to give it life. It was a whole spiritual lesson about attachment, which is what we're here to do. But luckily it's still down to my boobies anyway, it's neither here nor there, but I was upset because I'm attached to my hair. I'm attached to a lot of things. We all are. So let's get into it. Now that you've listened to your body, you've taken a moment, let's lock in, as the kids say. Time to lock in. When I started this line of work in 2020, a lot of the women who were attracted to work with me were ripe off of that to be magnetic spiritual materialism energy, wanting to manifest. It's incredibly empowering when you start to notice, wow, my thoughts and beliefs and energy impact my reality. Maybe it's a holographic universe, or maybe I attract every single thing that happens to me. So maybe I can use these powers intentionally. Maybe I can get myself a mansion or my dream car or my dream boyfriend or whatever I want. And I dealt with a lot of people trying to manifest outcomes. And that's what I was doing too. Manifest weight loss, manifest hair growth, manifest clients, manifest a thriving business, manifest my next home, manifest destiny. And most people who are in this sort of new age manifestation culture know that there's a strong emphasis on releasing attachment. You're supposed to have, a clear vision, feel the feelings, act as if you already have it. So it's like gaslight yourself into thinking it's already yours, but then release attachment. And I would talk to so many people who would say, I want this, and this, but I'm not attached. I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my word, you're not attached? You seem pretty attached to me, right? And that becomes an endeavor in crazy making, because we're human beings and we want what we want. And generally, if you're trying to manifest something intentionally, you're trying to call it in, you're trying to create it, you're trying to make it happen. Of course, you're attached to the outcome. Otherwise, you wouldn't be trying to manifest it, right? So I would watch these women go in circles, and it truly can be a crazy making endeavor. I have two coaches that I really owe a lot to. Funnily enough, both are named Megan. One I only interacted with by viewing her content online. So I never actually worked with her personally. I just watched a lot of her stuff on TikTok and Instagram. That's Meg Arcadia. And another I worked with very intimately, very personally. I did sessions with her for years, Megan Madsen. Interestingly enough, both made a lot of content about twin flames. Meg Arcadia actually deleted all of that content, which is just a sad, at least that's what I heard. I find that to be kind of heartbreaking when somebody deletes their past work, but I know it's not because she doesn't stand for it. I think it's that you can't control who consumes and what they do with that consumption. And I think a lot of people have become so obsessed on that twin flame journey and actually moved into dis-ease and imbalance. So I think it was her endeavor to not amplify that, not feed the beast, but I don't really know. But both of these Megans taught me a lot about attachment as I understand it. So I first wanted to credit them. And there are other authors, thinkers, and mystics I will probably cite throughout this. So let's start with what the Megs helped me realize. And this harkens back to those of you trying to manifest still, because I can hear you going, I have to release attachment. And then nobody knows what that actually means or how that's even possible or how to do that healthfully. What a lot of people wind up doing when they say they're detaching is they wind up just creating an aloofness or a feeling of being apathetic, uninspired, or uninterested. That's a false energy, sort of band-aiding on top of a very intense attachment. And that's not obviously what we're going for. We don't want to be forcing this detachment or forcing a releasing of attachment, which is just, the inverse of attachment. So what are we actually striving for? What are we looking to embody? Let's just start by honoring that detachment has been totally fucked in the New Age spiritual community. So if you've been immersed in New Age spiritual concepts, you're probably struggling with some very distorted ideas of attachment. Again, my hope is this is a tunnel. You pop up somewhere new, surprising, and delightful. Speaking to my twin flames specifically, some of you may have encountered a part of your journey where you know a specific outcome is going to happen. Not just twin flames. Let's talk any psychic or seer, clairvoyant. If I know a specific outcome is going to happen, how do I detach from it? Forget about then even knowing something's going to happen. What if you haven't had a vision, but it's just something you really want? If you have a deep desire for an outcome, how do you actually detach from it? As the Megs taught me with their words and showed me and sort of imprinted upon me with the impartation of their energy, detachment does not mean bypassing. Detachment does not mean ignoring. Detachment does not mean repressing your desires, your wants, or your intuitive understanding of what is going to happen. Let's repeat that. Detachment does not mean bypassing. It does not mean ignoring. It does not mean repressing your desires, your wants, or your intuitive understanding of what is going to happen, what is happening or unfolding now. What detachment actually means is allowing things to enter your conscious awareness naturally and organically, as they do, and then allowing them to leave naturally and organically, as they do. It does not mean not wanting or desiring what you want or desire. And it certainly doesn't mean ignoring your intuition. It means surrendering to the fact that you don't get to decide in your human form, in your human state, what happens between points A and B or A and Z. You don't get to decide the timing. You don't get to decide the order of events. That's just not how it works. Attaching is the wounded feminine instinct to control or to freak out when something you thought was going to happen in terms of the order of events or the timing of events when that doesn't happen. And when I say wounded feminine instinct, I don't mean that this is a female phenomenon. I'm talking about energies. Men and women have masculine and feminine energies. Attachment, from my perspective, as I'm discussing it now, is a wounded feminine instinct. When what you thought was going to happen doesn't happen the way you thought it would or the way you wanted it to, and then you just sort of release this massive need to judge. You claim that this outcome is wrong, right? I'm supposed to be with my twin. I saw him in the vision of my wedding over and over. I saw him as the father of my child. This is wrong. That wounded feminine instinct of judgment is attachment. Instead, what this is a moment, an opportunity to surrender to divine design, to remember that every single manifestation is actually much, much bigger than you. There are other people, a lot of other people, who are impacted by your journey. If you're listening to this podcast right now, which you are inherently, obviously, I'm speaking to you right now, you can't even conceptualize the ripple effect that your energy has. It would drive you mad. I truly, truly believe that it would be impossibly overwhelming to our nervous systems to know the full expressions of the plan, of how our light and energy impacts every single person. This neighbor, this person, what they did, their neighbor, their cousin, their best friend, their boyfriend, their husband, their mom, their sister, blah, 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 ripple, ripple, ripple. I think it would drive us all mad. And if you're here, which you are, you're an energetic leader. Not just between the masculine and feminine within your own vessel, and if you're a twin, between the masculine and feminine in your dynamic. Now I'm speaking of the divine feminines because they are the energetic leaders. But anyone who's here is an energetic leader in some capacity for the whole planet. If you were given all the details of how your energy is leading other people, impacting other people, you truly would be so tired and so overwhelmed all the time. The divine protects you from that. So again, detaching doesn't mean detaching from knowing what's going to happen at some point, or detaching from wanting something to happen at some point. It means you're detaching from your need to control how it happens, anchoring in trust, humility, and gratitude. I want to say it another way. This is from Sue Morter's The Energy Codes. I recently read this book, actually listened to it on Audible. I don't recommend that as an experience. Some books you just should not listen to. No offense, Sue. That having had been said, in her heart code on attachment, she has a beautiful, beautiful synopsis of how she conceives of attachment, and I want to do my best to summarize it here. If you really want to learn about attachment, the Buddhist tradition speaks a lot about it. I'm not going to attempt to butcher any of that, but most of you have probably heard attachment is the root of all suffering. Sue makes the distinction between unattached and detached, which I think is really beautiful. The detachment that I was just referring to that I learned from the Megs is what Sue is calling unattached. She describes unattached as a simply sincere absence of worry about the outcome. The focus is on the action of loving, not its results. The action of being present, being in your life, taking one inspired step, but not a hyperfixation on the outcome. Detachment, on the other hand, she describes as a sort of aloofness, a distance maintained not only between the self and the outcome, but between the self and the action of loving. She also considers it an out-of-the-body experience that keeps us thinking we're safe, but actually it just keeps stirring the untethered, unanchored experience of rapidly vibrating energy that is actually quite unsafe. It's like a Band-Aid on top of an intensity that causes us to be uninterested, uninspired, and apathetic. And she talks about this detachment coming from trauma or learned from stressful environments that we needed to escape, perhaps when we were younger. So what we're striving for in her context is unattachment, right? That sincere absence of worry about the outcome. Of course, easier said than done. Now, when we're speaking about attachment, the last few minutes I've been talking about attachment to outcomes, right? Attachment to things happening, manifestations arriving, relationships blooming, prizes won. Attachment shows up in a lot of different forms, though. We can have attachment to wounded imprints, to aspects of our identity. If I'm attached to the story that I always have the moral high ground, I might attract people who treat me like shit because it reinforces the story that I am somehow morally superior. Like, I would never treat other people like this. I'm not saying that's a true imprint for me. I'm just providing an example. In spiritual evolution, we're attempting to loosen attachment to all things so that we can allow our true divine blueprint to come alive. And attachment to me is like this sticky, tacky taffy. What's actually ours doesn't need to attach and latch on in this way. It's just inherently us. So those who work with me often find that there's some sort of ego death they go through where they're forced to learn how to detach or unattach, as Sue Morter would say, healthfully, so they can still feel loving and present in their life without constantly being burdened by the suffering that attachment invokes. Right? If you're attached to an outcome and you don't get that outcome, suffering. If you're attached to a wounded imprint and therefore you keep attracting suffering, then you're suffering, right? Attachment generally, in some way, shape, or form, leads to suffering. So we're working to loosen our attachments so that we can healthfully love what we're meant to love, release what we're meant to release, and trust that what is meant for our lives will continue to be magnetized towards us in divine order. But if we're talking about attachment, I would be remiss if we didn't dive into a little bit of attachment theory. So we're going to go deeper underground in the tunnel now and spend a few minutes exploring attachment theory. At this moment, again, I invite you to ask your body if there's anything you need. I needed a little bit more water, and I actually put some Sakara beauty drops in my water. Shout out to Sakara, shout out beauty drops. Again, as I put them in my water, I was really taking a moment to set that intention that cultivating physical beauty is a sacred practice. You know, putting on makeup is a portal, a positive portal. Doing my hair is a positive portal. Adorning myself intentionally when I leave the house. All of these things are part of that calm, regulated nervous system. I have the luxury of being able to take care of how I appear, and that can be sacred and beautiful. So yeah, I'm really in a season of taking a moment, and as I put supplements in my beverages, setting strong intentions. I encourage you to do the same. Even if it's just, swallowing your vitamin D, your fish oil, rather than just mindlessly consuming, really setting an intention, what you are hoping that supplement will do for you. My hair grew an inch and a half in a week after blessing my beef liver and blessing my black sesame seeds. So that's the fastest my hair has ever grown, ever. But we're not going to keep plugging products. We're going to return to attachment. Just a moment of levity, because I know this topic can be heavy for some, and it certainly is heavy for me. And I'm feeling almost like this energy standing on my chest and my voice deepening. The past few years, attachment and attachment styles have been really present in the pop psychology, social media sphere. And certainly those who have been working a twin flame journey have thought about their attachment style. Most everyone in their 20s and 30s has heard about anxious attachment, avoidant attachment. I was actually at my friend Peter's 40th birthday party a few months back, and these two women were bickering back and forth, like, no, you're anxious. And she's like, no, I'm avoidant. No, you're anxious. And then I kind of poked in, you can heal your attachment style, right? And then it was just like, boom, detonated that conversation. But you can heal your attachment style. So I want to be so clear about that. I think people really think you just got to work with what you got. Oh, I'm anxious, and so I have to blah, 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 blah. That is attaching to an identity. That's exactly what I was talking about earlier. When you attach to a wounded imprint or a wounded piece of identity, that's actually not true. We don't want to attach to lies. Generally, anything you're attaching to is a lie and not meant for you. The things that are truthfully yours, the actual pieces of your identity, you won't need to attach to. And if you do, it will be secure attachment, which we will get into. But let's talk about attachment theory. Again, I did not major in psychology. I didn't go to grad school. I'm not a therapist. So there are plenty of other resources that will educate you on attachment theory much better than I could. But this is what I'm guided to offer. I think Kelly McDaniel says it best in her book, Mother Hunger, which I absolutely recommend listening to on Audible as an audiobook if you resonate with this book. This is a love letter to those who had a distant or abusive mother. Absolutely phenomenal read. Really just a love letter. I think if you didn't have a traumatic mothering experience, you might not resonate at all with the book. So I would only recommend it if you really feel that call. She describes that attachment theory is gaining momentum as an overarching psychological explanation for why humans live and love the way that we do. That our individual attachment style is really an embodied map for how we connect with others. While human attachment behaviors are diverse, we each have dominant patterns of connecting and relating with others that imprint very early. So it's those formative months in your mother's care when babies learn to attach. Dr. Dan Siegel, who's a psychiatrist, the director of the Center for Human Development at UCLA, offers a clinical perspective when he writes, attachment establishes an interpersonal relationship that helps the immature brain, the child's, use the mature functions of the parent's brain to organize its own processes. Say that one more time because I didn't read that very well. Attachment establishes an interpersonal relationship that helps the immature brain to organize its own processes. The in between the commas there, is that the child uses the mature functions of the parent's brain to do so. So the baby is basically borrowing mommy's brain to be able to organize its own processes. In the absence of a steady and nurturing protective adult, early attachment lessons lead to insecurity, insecure attachment. And avoidant and anxious are both two styles of an insecure attachment. And Mother Hunger, the title of Kelly's book, is a term that describes what adult insecure attachment feels like. That felt sensation of being hungry for those essential elements of maternal care. To get a little bit historical, attachment theory, I believe, was born after World War II, when John Bowlby, a British psychiatrist and psychoanalyst who worked in orphanages, noticed that even though these children were receiving food, shelter, and medical care, they didn't thrive. In fact, a lot of these babies in these orphanages died. So he started to study how this could happen, and then later Larry Ainsworth expanded on his work. Essentially, what they discovered is that human babies are hardwired to depend on caregiver nurturance. They are bonding machines, biologically designed to stay close to their primary caregiver, which most of the time is mom. Mother's warmth literally strengthens the social areas of the baby's brain. Cuddling stimulates brain growth, as do thousands of micro interactions that come with being changed, being fed, being carried, being bathed. Each moment between mommy and baby has the potential to build the sense that the world is a welcome and safe place to be. Each micro moment teaches the newborn that it's safe to be alive, that life can feel good, that I am close, that I am near. And this healthy maternal care really enhances brain growth, particularly the right side of the brain, which has to do with common sense thinking, ability to read other people's cues, cultivating empathy, all that good stuff. So what the baby really depends on, and what the right brain growth depends on, is predictable, sensitive attachment moments. Predictable, sensitive attachment moments. Dr. Alan Scher, who's a professor of interpersonal neurobiology, try to say that 3 times fast, at the Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA, calls this an experienced dependent process. So mother's love is the foundation for a brain that either fundamentally trusts or mistrusts human connection. Learning to attach is all about these primitive experiences of loving touch, safe sounds. A lot of this gets stored in the body as implicit memory, right? You and I don't have conscious memories of our diapers being changed and the way mom and dad looked at me or held me, or how we felt being held in the world. We don't have a conscious memory. This is implicit memory, body-based memory. It's how we hold info about the world and our family before that explicit or conscious memory comes online. So there's no recall. So we're infants, we're capturing these sensations about the environment, hopefully joy, safety, belonging, but also maybe stress. That gets stored in our implicit memory, a primitive part of our innate intelligence. And it's pretty wild. From the last trimester to 2 years old, apparently, the baby's brain doubles in size. So this is a period of rapid growth. And the baby's brain depends on the primary caregiver's brain for emotional regulation, to soothe distress, to feel safe, to trust in human connection. It can't yet think for itself. The baby needs the caregiver to translate love into baby language, through sound, through touch, and through consistency. So again, babies are sharing a brain with their mother, essentially, as they're waiting for the cognitive brain regions that govern logic and reason to develop. And so much about what happens when we're so early, and we really don't have any control of that, forms our attachment style. And again, avoidant and anxious are 2 expressions of insecure. According to the stats in Mother Hunger, 50% of people struggle with insecure attachment. With those stats, it's hard to consider it a pathology, but also, how often something occurs isn't really a good indicator of pathology. If 80% of Americans were obese, it's not the true stat, I'm just saying, doesn't mean it's still not pathological. But it's incredibly common to experience some form of insecure attachment. So let's normalize that. Just a quick little moment for anxious and avoidant. I don't want to give either identity too much life, frankly, because I don't want anyone to get too attached to their attachment style because they can be healed. As a former anxious girly, hallmarks of an anxious attachment style are anxiety, codependency, and giving of love too easily and quickly. Giving of love and trust when it hasn't been earned. And I saw someone make a really interesting chart once of trust self, do not trust self, anxious avoidant, and sort of the interplay between all of them. I wish I could find that creator. But often anxious attachment style individuals trust others, but they don't really trust themselves, while the inverse is often true of avoidance. They trust themselves, but they do not trust others. Avoidant attachment is generally marked by an aloof or uninterested mask, emotional unavailability, and someone who does not give love quickly or easily. And then this creator described that not trusting self and not trusting others was fearful attachment, lack of boundaries, difficulty giving and receiving love from any source. We're not really going to touch that one today. What I have found personally, and again, this is not in literature, and I am not a therapist, but I have found that these attachment styles, when they are so extreme and someone is so imprinted by the wounding of their attachment style, I have found can evolve into personality disorders. Anxious attachment in extreme cases, borderline personality disorder. Avoidant attachment in extreme cases, narcissistic personality disorder. Again, that is not from the literature. That's just Jillian Melissa's findings and observations. But clearly, we don't want to hunker down attaching to our attachment style, right? We don't want to hunker down attaching to anything. If we attach to levels of consciousness, right? Victim consciousness so severe it becomes prisoner consciousness. You've heard me talk about that before. Attaching to identity. If you're so attached, this was my journey. I was so attached to being a dancer, and then boom, I'm in a wheelchair. Like, how do I re-navigate my sense of self? Now I'm not a dancer. M. Scott Peck, you know I love to quote him, the writer of The Road Less Traveled, talks about attachment using the language dependency, right? So you've probably all heard of codependency. You may or may not know I was once forced to go to CODA meetings, Codependency Anonymous, back when I was living in a sober living. And I found it so ironic because, yeah, Bubbles is ringing the bell. I don't know if you can hear that. I'll take you on a walk in 1 second, but I will. But first I want to tell him, most of the people in the sober living home I lived in were addicted to a substance. I was not. I was attached to this concept that I belonged in a mental institution. So I was addicted to that thought loop, like an obsessive compulsive looping. I belong in a mental institution. I need to die. I belong in a mental institution. I can't live on my own. I belong in a mental institution. I need to be a ward of the state, over and over and over. And I was also very dependent on my mommy and daddy, who I would like call and say, this sober living sucks, get me out of here. And they didn't like that. So they said, okay, you're codependent. You should go to CODA meetings. And what was so wildly ironic to me was that they immediately recommended I get a sponsor. And the idea with the sponsor is that I listen to whatever this person says. If the sponsor calls, you have to pick up. The sponsor says something, you have to obey. And I'm like, pardon me, but this seems to harken back to the very concept of codependency. And you're telling me this person who struggles with codependency now just gets this gifted relationship of someone to be in this weird codependent dynamic with, and I'm supposed to just obey? Like, how do I know their advice is any good? Like, what? Yeah, maybe they've worked the steps, but where are they on their spiritual journey? What? So I was flabbergasted. But codependency becomes a hallmark of any insecure attachment style, right? The last episode where I talked about love, you could feel that energy of love has spaciousness. It has free will. It certainly has discipline. But it's not needy. It's not outcome dependent. And the real thing about the codependency is that our emotional well-being becomes dependent on another energy, another person. And so M. Scott Peck refers to this dependency. He's used the language dependency, not codependency, although codependency is what really became popularized. But when you require another individual for your survival, you're a parasite. That's not love. There's no free will choice. There's no freedom in that relationship, period, when it's a matter of necessity. Love is the free exercise of choice. Two people love each other only when they're quite capable of living without each other, but they choose to live with each other, right? So that secure attachment style, which would be emblematic of love, there's a free will choice, but also the capacity to be okay without. Peck defines dependency as the inability to experience wholeness or to function adequately without the certainty that one is being actively cared for by another. So when we're talking about dependency in a relationship, it's that feeling of, if I'm not with my twin, I'm not okay, I'm not complete. And extrapolating this to outcomes, if you're dependent on a certain salary, a certain manifestation, and you're unable to experience wholeness now or function adequately now without having this perceived sense of certainty, that's attachment. Attachment is dependency. One way you can feel that something is attachment or dependency is that hunger. There's an emptiness and a hunger that distinguishes it from genuine love. Hunger drives people to initiate or cling to relationships that are detrimental to them. I know it, I've lived it. The only way to really heal that is to accept the necessity for the strictest kind of discipline over that hunger, if you really want to capitalize on your assets and align with what's truthfully yours. We can talk about that more at another time. This is not to say that passive dependent people never do things for others, but their motive in doing things is to cement the attachment of others to them so as to assure their own care. When the possibility of care from another is not directly involved, these types of people struggle greatly in doing things. So this type of codependent person is literally maybe doing favors for other people or calling people just, again, to cement that attachment, to secure that feeling that you care about me. There's a neediness. There's as my ex would say, a clawing. And really interestingly, Peck describes a behavioral hallmark of passive dependent people in marriage is that their role differentiation is very rigid, and they seek to increase rather diminish mutual dependency. So the marriage becomes kind of a trap. Right? Like the man does all this, the woman does all this, and I don't know how to do his task, and he doesn't know how to do my task, and so we're stuck in this, right? It's always an illusion. You're never stuck. If you're in a relationship that destroys the growth of you or your partner, you're allowed to leave. I do want to remind you of that. So dependency and attachment really has its genesis in a lack of love. It's an inner feeling of emptiness, often birthed from when we were wee babies, and really is a byproduct, a direct result of, frankly, parents' failure to fulfill their child's needs for affection, attention, and care. So it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to take ownership of and heal. Your attachment style with romantic partners, right? When we're talking anxious avoidant, we're talking about romantic partners for the most part. What we were just describing in a marriage, for example. Those attachment styles that people have with romantic partners generally are the same attachment styles they have with money and often everyone in their life, although sometimes someone can embody a particular attachment style with lovers and something very different with everyone else, but that's not as common. A reminder that Dependency is not concerned with spiritual growth. Attachment's actually not concerned with spiritual growth. So Peck writes, dependent people are interested in their own nourishment, but no more. They desire filling. They desire to be happy. They don't desire to grow, nor are they willing to tolerate the unhappiness, the loneliness, and suffering involved in growth. Neither do dependent people care about the spiritual growth of the other, the object of their dependency. They care only that the other is there to satisfy them. Dependency is but one of the forms of behavior to which we incorrectly apply the word love when concern for spiritual evolution is absent. I've seen this a lot with those who have come to me for coaching around their twin flame, their perceived twin flame, and they are so attached to this other person. I've worked mostly with women, although I've had a few brilliant male clients, and I celebrate their strength in being able to seek this type of support on a journey that's often stereotypically one that consumes women. So just celebrating the men out there who are awake to their journey. I think you are just the most badass beings, and it's been such an honor working with you, and I hope you stay the course. But I'm thinking of a few clients in particular, of course I wouldn't name, but I also was one of these clients once, so I can spot the template because I had it. These individuals become so obsessed with their perceived twin flame, and the first red flag for me, because the twin flame journey, the true twin journey, which I will continue to speak about, and I know I've only alluded to, all in divine timing, it's a journey of obliterating attachment. So part of why I wanted to open this conversation, the twin journey kind of is like bumpers on bowling. It's a foolproof plan. Those who haven't been forced to navigate the treachery that is that journey aren't forced to learn these attachment lessons quite as brutally, and so it becomes a free will choice. Are you going to learn it or not? The twin journey kind of forces your hand. You have to learn. But most twins that I've encountered who are truly working this journey have to come to a point where they're willing to consider that maybe this person is not their twin. Maybe they are just obsessed with somebody who mirrors them, or someone who's intentionally, skillfully mirroring them because they're a charismatic narcissist. Not because they're their twin, but because they're a really charismatic narcissist, or, a true psychopath, perhaps. Or not. Maybe they're just a guy, Maybe they're just a girl. Maybe they're just someone. But these individuals become so attached to the narrative that I am a twin flame, I am a divine feminine, that is my other half, that is my twin soul, that is my masculine. I know it with every fiber of my being, and I was there. Trust me, I was so there. And you can ask a lot of people. You become so attached to that narrative, and then they become unwilling to examine it. And most true twins are forced to have a sustained window of time where they not only consider that this person may not be their twin, but they may have gotten it wrong. This person really might not be that. The individuals who are unwilling to go down that pathway to even consider, like when I've asked that in sessions, okay, are you open to the possibility that he's not your twin? Could we just go on a thought experiment for a moment? When that gets shut down, when it's like, I know in my soul, I know in my marrow, I know in every fiber of my being, and they're unwilling to even contemplate it as a theoretical, hypothetical conversation, to me, sirens go off in my clairaudience and red flags go up in my clairvoyance. It's like, wait, oh shoot. This person is so rigidly attached. They're holding on, to, I'm imagining like grabbing a rose, but like grabbing the stem with the thorns and your hand's bleeding out. They're so attached. It's like grabbing an electric fence, getting shocked, and then holding on even tighter. And again, I've been there, so fervently gripping. If we're not even willing to relax the grip in a conversation with a healer over Zoom, wow, like we have some serious attachment that we need to move through. And it's not to say that true twins, I do believe, have an embodied knowing that, yes, this is my twin. but it's a softer, more spacious, more loving, spiritual knowing that feels fertile and I guess more nurturing, as opposed to the sharp, angular, attached, gripped, codependent. No, I know, like I can't go there, right? So anytime we're holding on too tight, we're gonna generally be forced to learn the lesson, let go or be dragged, especially if the thing we're holding on to is not in alignment, right? If you're holding on to the electric fence that's already shocking you and hurting you, the invitation is to let go, not hold on more and tighter and for longer. So I think you all are getting a very clear feel for attachment. The way it grips us, the way it binds us, and the way it blinds us. We talked about attachment as problematic because it induces suffering. Aw, Bubbles is saying hello. Hi, sweet boy. Certainly induces suffering. It thwarts our spiritual growth. It's actually anti-love. It's not love. So it thwarts the expansion of love. But I do want to conclude by also highlighting, or start to conclude. We'll see how. Yes, you yawning? Are you bored? You're like, shut up, Mom, and come play with me. I'll wrap it up, Bubba. Attachment can blind us because it literally functions as energetic blinders. So let's talk about how attachment blinds us. Attachment really functions as energetic blinders, blocking our periphery, blocking our ability to access other components. Let's talk about it in terms of a wealth principle, for example, right? The true measure of wealth is net worth, not working income. So that's your incomes, your savings, your investments, and also dealing with simplification, cost of living, right? If you haven't read Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker and you're trying to grow your financial legacy, I do recommend checking that book out. But let's just say you're solely focused on your working income. You're not even considering a passive income. You're like, I can't save, I can't invest, and I'm not going to focus on simplifying my cost of living so that I have more to save and invest, or some to save and invest. You really have your blinders on, just your income, just what you're making at your job. You're missing out on so many other aspects of building your wealth. And additionally, if you're only focused on just building that income, you might actually fall prey to Parkinson's law, which is that expenses will always rise in direct proportion to income. Expenses will always rise in direct proportion to income. You get more money, you get a better car. You make more money, you get a bigger house. You get some new clothes, you get nicer makeup. You buy bougier skincare, whatever it is, right? Generally, as income goes up, your expenses also goes up, which is part of why income alone doesn't create wealth, although certainly not the only reason. But if you were just focused, if you were so attached to focusing on just one aspect, your working income, again, you would miss out on the breadth and depth of what's possible for you financially. Right? When we become so attached to this person fulfilling a particular role, we lose out on the possibility of perhaps more aligned people around us. When we get so attached to moving to this particular city, again, if it's a soul call, if it's truly light-led, love-led, you will wind up in that city. That attachment, that grip, is often a darker, more wounded energy. And it's not an energy of spiritual growth. Attachment is not love. As you know, where your attention goes, your energy flows. So if you're focusing your attention on attachment, you're probably going to yield more attachment, which is actually not going to serve you. So the invitation would be to shift the focus a little bit off of attachment and onto love, right? If you're in a situationship, flirtationship, addictionship, rather than hyperfixating on that other person or the ship, bringing the attention to center, hand on your heart. What would love have me do? Some people think choice idolatry is freedom. It is not. I don't know where that came from, but it felt really important. Idolizing choice is not the same as freedom. And perhaps I was conceiving of an attachment to freedom, someone hyper attached to the concept of freedom, but what they're actually embodying is choice idolatry. I've been spending a lot of time with what I call Jesus friends lately, which is probably not what you should call your Christian friends, but I've been really leaning into the Texas culture. I've gone to some Bible studies. I'm on my 4th week of a biblical theology class, which I'm actually adoring and finding so fascinating. But I've been talking to different neighbors and friends about all different manifestations of the Christ impulse. And I've watched a few of these friends become so attached to their beliefs that they've actually lost their connection to love. Not all of them. Some of them are very much in Christ consciousness and in love, but some of them are not, right? So even attachment to anything can become problematic. Now, I'm not encouraging anyone to become completely untethered, go off in a cave, live in the mountain, relinquish your responsibilities. That's not what we're doing here. As we've talked about before, love is a very disciplined phenomenon, right? I am building secure attachment with my dog Bubbles. I want him to know that I'm here for him when he's scared. You know, he recently ate a grape and we had an emergency vet visit because grapes are poisonous. And when the vet was coming into our room and wanting to start touching Bubbles, Bubbles jumped up on the couch where I was sitting and ran into wanted mommy to hold him. And it was in that moment I saw we have something here. You trust me. You know that I'm mommy. I'm the safe one. Yes, that's good. But I don't want you to be so anxious that you don't feel also safe to go with the doctor, right? So how can I cultivate a sense for you right now that you're safe to be free? Attachment actually limits our freedom. Attachment limits our ability to express our love in the world, to express our purpose. Again, I'm not saying abandon your kids, abandon your husband. You have responsibilities and loving connections that are true. Love will help you sustain those. You don't need to worry about attachment to anything other than children, right? Children, moms, babies, we got to attach. Dads, babies, we got to attach. We have to build out. It's our job now as adults to work to build a secure and healthy attachment style for our young ones. It's also our job to heal our attachment trauma so we don't perpetuate suffering in our adult relationships or with the next generation, with our kids, with our babies, our fur babies. So hopefully you feel yourself starting to pop up out of this tunnel, and maybe you're wondering what attachment style you are. Maybe you're wondering if it even matters. If you don't want to attach to your attachment style, perfect. If you feel like you are embodying insecure attachment in ways that are impacting your life, or you're just overly attached to things you're ready to let go of, pieces of identity, wounded imprints, levels of consciousness, patterns, lessons. If you're feeling ready to detach or unattach in a healthful way, please reach out if you need support. Like I said, or maybe I didn't say, I've done so many attempted recordings, who knows if it made it in this one. I will be closing my books June 1st to the public. I'll only at that point be working with those regular clients who work with me on a longer term basis and purchase packages of sessions. I have space for 2 more soulmate clients if you think one of those individuals is you. Taking that plug out of it, If you need support, which you very well might, I really do encourage you to find a therapist, a counselor, a healer, a mentor that can help you start to heal your attachment style, because you very much can. You very much can, and perhaps we'll do a whole episode about how we do that. And you are very capable of releasing attachments that no longer serve you. Life should naturally come in and out. Emotions, raw emotions should come in and out. If it lasts more than 15 to 20 minutes, it's not a raw emotional energy. It's actually a story you're telling yourself. You're looping. You're attaching to a narrative, right? Part of running your energy successfully is understanding that you are a water wheel. Things will come in, things will move out, some of which you'll be able to alchemize, some of which you'll need to deflect, and a lot of which you'll need to release. A spiritual initiation involves releasing a lot of attachment, a lot of things that you thought you needed, you're going to learn to live without, unfortunately. And then you're going to learn that God, divine, spirit, source always has your back. You can still manifest in a way where you're excited about your manifestations and you have desires, but you also trust that if not that, something better, something more divine, right? You can understand that you are God while also not trying to play God, right? You're part of the whole, but you're also connected to a whole. And as I described at the start, there are so many people who are relying on your manifestations, but there are so many puzzle pieces that need to clink together for the whole, right? Maybe you and your twin, if you were actually to come into union, would have such a sort of atomic bomb of love impact that would ripple out into your families. But your twin's brother needs 6 more months to be ready to handle that energetically and nervous system wise. And your mom needs a year and whatever, there are other people's timing that's at play, and there's always also free will. Is there anything else about attachment that wants to come forth before we wrap up for today? She inquires. No matter what has been, what has succeeded, and what has appeared to fail, what has been loved and what has been lost, there is only one truth that will prevail in your life, without failure, without exception, and that is love. It is all you are truly seeking, and it is behind every life experience seeking you. Do not stand back from it. I wish I knew what that was from, but that felt important. Also feeling guided to say, seeing what others do not see is called brilliance. Knowing what others do not know is called genius. Brilliant geniuses win first. That's from Art of War, that I do know. And thank you guys so much for being here. It's 4:44. It feels like a great time to conclude. I'm going to go do some fun moon stuff, walk Bubbles, who's been a really patient boy. May you have some new realizations upon listening to me prattle on about attachment. I hope that you have some epiphanies, some new ideas start to percolate, and love hearing from y'all. So feel free to reach out with questions, comments, concerns, compliments. I'll take it all. Sending you guys so much love. Thank you so much for tuning in to It's Time with Jillian Melissa. If you're feeling like it's time to leave that toxic relationship, launch that business, share your voice with the world. If you're feeling like it's time for whatever, it probably is. So I invite you to trust your intuitive compass. And if you're feeling like it's time to connect with me, I invite you to follow me on Instagram at JillianMelissa_intuition. That's really the hub of all my content, and using the link in bio, my link tree, you can access links to book a private session with me. You can join my monthly membership community through Patreon. I post upcoming workshops, group channeling classes, intuitive guidance gatherings, and much more. So that's really the best way to stay connected with my energy. My hope is that you bestow love on all those who cross your path. And until we meet again, I love you.